I'm in Abbey Lane again, heading down towards the Abbey, I think, for a bit more history. Savignac monks, Cistercian monks, and an abbot who wrote history. And it's all coming from down here. The Abbey is like the cornerstone of Coggeshall's history. Not that there wasn't history before the Abbey, but a lot of historical documents have come out from Coggeshall Abbey. They've come from the hands of an abbot by the name of Ralph. More on him shortly. In the previous video was how the Abbey was established and King Stephen and the two Matildas. The Abbey, founded by King Stephen and Queen Matilda in 1140, was the very last of the Savignac daughter houses to be founded before the order was merged with the Cistercians. So let's go back to 1140, when the Bishop of London granted some land to a group of monks who were followers of a holy man called Saint Savin. The order itself was founded in 1098, and their first monastery was at Savigny in France. The English province of the order was established in 1143 with the arrival of 12 Savignac monks led by a man called John of Vernon. They came over from France to help establish a house here in England. The Savignac monks adopted a life of austerity, wearing simple, rough clothing, often made of wool from discarded materials. They took vows of poverty, chastity and obedience, and they worked hard to help the poor and sick in their communities. They were also very involved in the building of cathedrals and churches, and they played a big part in the building of Salisbury Cathedral. The Savignac order was merged with the Cistercian order in 1147. This merger occurred after the Savignac order experienced financial and administrative difficulties. The abbot of Savigny offered his order to Bernard, abbot of Clairvaux, and the Savignac order was then incorporated into the Cistercians, according to English heritage. Cistercians follow the rule of Saint Benedict, but Cistercians emerged as a reform movement aiming for stricter adherence to the rule. They were more independent, and they had a greater emphasis on manual labour and self-sufficiency. In fact, they were known for their beautiful stone buildings and also for their cheese making. By the end of the 12th century, most of the work on the Abbey church had been completed, and it was a much admired building. Where we're standing now, here, is more or less where there was a gatehouse. There's no evidence it was here. The only clue you get is the fact of the chapel. And if you look at the plan for the Abbey, you'll see that the chapel on the plan is not too far from the gatehouse. So we would be going through the gatehouse, probably let in by the monks if we're allowed to. Let's go through the imaginary gatehouse now and head down towards the Abbey.
Bless you, my child.
Well, as you saw, the monk gave me his blessing. But here we are, heading back down to where it all began. Some years ago, and the exact dates I can't find, they're probably around somewhere, they did excavations of this site. And you will find, if you go into Coggeshall Museum, you will find some things that came out of that excavation. Particularly, they discovered a skull with a head injury, and where it was buried was a particularly important thing that gave an indication of whose skull that was, because there was only one monk who had a head injury. This is the story of that monk. Ralph, also known as Ralph of Coggeshall, was the 6th abbot of Coggeshall Abbey in Essex. Serving from 1207 to 1218, he is particularly remembered for his historical writings, specifically his contributions to the Chronicon Anglicanum, the Chronicle of English Affairs. He was a learned individual described as having a high degree of erudition and being a celebrated member of the Cistercian order. Ralph was the 6th abbot of Coggeshall Abbey in the Cistercian Foundation. His most significant contribution is his work on the Chronicon Anglicanum, a chronicle that covers English history from 1066 to 1223. While the entire chronicle is attributed to him, he likely contributed to it from about 1200 onwards, documenting events from 1187. When he came to Coggeshall, Ralph was already a celebrated member of the order due to his exploits in the Holy Land. He had travelled with the Crusaders in 1185 amongst other pious men who were needed to comfort the weak, instruct the ignorant and animate the brave, and was present at the fall of Jerusalem to the Saracens under Saladin in 1187. It was due to this siege that he received a head injury, which caused him great suffering later in life. He later wrote about his experiences in the Crusades in his Chronicle of the Holy Land. The final entry in this chronicle was in 1191, after which he returned to England and retired to monastic life at Coggeshall Abbey. Here he set down his Chronicle of English Affairs, without which we would know very little of the events during the early and formative years of Coggeshall Abbey. In 1218, suffering from increasing bouts of indisposition from his head injury, Ralph resigned as abbot against the wishes of the brethren and was superseded by Coggeshall's 7th abbot, Benedict. Ralph continued to live in Coggeshall for a further 10 years until his death in 1228. It's wonderful that history is in safe hands when it's done, when the records are kept by someone like a monk who is not writing things down to sell books to make money, but just doing it honestly and writing everything that he hears, he checks, he keeps updating in a meticulous way. That sort of history is precious. That sort of documentation is the sort of thing that we should really treasure. But if you enjoyed the video, as always, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in another video. Stay safe.